Good afternoon, everyone. Fabulous last session of the day, so I'll try and keep it exciting. So, scaling up, we know we need to do it. Is it possible or an ongoing aspiration? So the obvious answer is, of course we can do it. There's a lot of positivity in here and I know we can do it. But if we do it, do our goals and objectives remain the same? And do they include ensuring that we've got sites that represent our reference community, or what we're really aiming for, and that sites are on that correct trajectory? Do our goals still include restoring the structure and function and diversity of our ecosystems? And do our goals and actions include managing threatened species? Do they include planning? And if that's done, how do we really do that on the large scale that's really required, but still cover all aspects of that recovery process? And how do we ensure that robust monitoring occurs when we're struggling to do it at the moment on a much smaller scale? So do we need to adapt our approaches? So one of the things we need to do as an industry is continuing to improve our skills. So being here and sharing information and experience and studies that have been done is a fantastic way of doing that. We equally need to continue to improve our skills in site assessment. So really taking the time to understand the site, the area, the corridor that we might be restoring. So starting with, how is each area disturbed? How is it previously disturbed? How is it naturally disturbed? And then really understanding where we as restoration ecologists or practitioners influence that intervention. So understanding the places of highest resilience, I think, is key, and then what techniques would suit those areas to stimulate recovery, because it often comes back to costs, and if we can do that, it really sets us on a really good trajectory ourselves. So analysing connectivity and how that local and regional flora and fauna is likely to move onto our site or as part of that corridor, and really looking at the habitat requirements for local and migratory fauna. So applying the most suitable restoration approach is really key. And this is key to not only getting the outcomes we're looking for on a larger scale, but also reducing costs where we can, and also the energy that we all put into it, as well as the results that we get. So how do we do this from a planning perspective and demonstrate to managers and landowners that the benefits of a good practical plan that can really take a site from what might be really overwhelming to something that's quite doable? It can greatly assist with efficiencies, both environmental efficiencies, if we can get the timing right, but also in economic efficiencies. Keeps multiple stakeholders moving in the same direction. If we do planning well, it involves them at the start and keeps them going through the process and all of us together. And assists with explaining to a range of stakeholders with probably a range of skills how to practically achieve their goals. It can also be used to gain additional funding, support, and really on those big sites and big corridors allows us to systematically break up those areas, work, get some wins and keep progressing that work. So the process of planning, I think lots of us know about these things. So identifying and working with stakeholders, your desktop analysis, and then really getting out there and taking that time to understand the site. Working with other experts and stakeholders, because we don't know everything and we really need to work with each other. Fauna ecologists, fire ecologists, if it's on a marine scale or a terrestrial scale, there's a whole lot of people that we need to work with and communicate with and persevere through these larger sites. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one site, Hidden Vale site, which is a site that covers 4,800 hectares. I just wrote a restoration plan for this site. I used to have black hair before, it went white just after finishing that plan. And it actually connects to a corridor of 17 square kilometres of natural area, so it's a pretty reasonable site. One of the tricks was actually balancing multiple objectives, so fire management, not only asset protection, but really looking after sensitive systems as well as those fire-adapted systems. They want to keep some farming on the land. And one of the keys was they've just built, in short, a $4 million rehab centre for threatened species rehabilitation on there. So first of all, we started looking at the site and could it house or safely look after or support the reintroduction of a number of threatened species, so spotted tail quoll, brush-tailed rock wallaby, bristlebird, long-nosed potteroo and koala. So I really worked with a whole lot of other experts in assessing that site, including GIS people to help me with maps, because I'm really crap at that, and designed the plan so not only could we break it up, but also that each part of the plan could be broken up and be utilised. So that's a snapshot. Each one of those colours is a separate precinct. The zones are within each precinct, and then there's sub-zones. In fact, we even did maps with arrows on them to assist the direction of works, because these sites can be pretty overwhelming. Mapped it according to regional ecosystems as well, so you can see there's several on there. And also looked at the statewide bushfire hazard mapping. Now, if that doesn't scare you into doing some restoration, nothing will. And we also looked at the fire regimes for the site, because, again, working large sites, protecting areas as well as utilising fire and fire-adapted sites is where you can get some really big gains in restoration. That's one of the sites broken down into zones and sub-zones. So this is the Gorges precinct, so I named them all, and then again broke it down into sites, zones, sub-zones to really assist that direction of works, which related directly to those aims and objectives. And you can see we did the same thing for each precinct, because what it allowed us to do, or what it allows all the various stakeholders. Now, at the moment, there's a lot of students studying out there. There's a lot of work being done on this site. There will be considerable dollars spent there over the next 30 years. And so to do a plan that, lasts that long, you don't want to have to redo these things all the time. So what it does is each precinct can be pulled out. You add the executive summary, a site assessment of the whole site, a map of the whole site, and then maps for that precinct. The description and of that precinct and the zones, recommendations, and then a set of appendices that support the work in that precinct. So you don't end up with this massive thing. Anyone that's working that site, whether it's the farmer managing an area, whether it's traditional owners participating in that process, or whether it's skilled bush regenerators, perhaps some further unskilled labour's been brought in to do some planting on a riparian zone, whatever it is, keeps everyone moving in that same direction. It can also be used to get further funding and attract potentially other partners to the project. So the second site I wanted to look at is Stuart Tail. It's we're doing a field trip there tomorrow, which will be great. So the whole site's 969 hectares. The restoration zone itself is 205 hectares, connects to the Flinders-Karawatha corridor, which is the largest remaining dry sclerophyll corridor in southeast Queensland. So the plan that was developed for the site, again, really looked at that project design and balancing all the variable objectives for that site. It looked at everything from assisted regeneration, so where we could maximise the recovery of vegetation and maximise the dollar, and then where it was more expensive and we had to reconstruct areas and do the planting, it facilitated spending more money in those zones to create the linkages across that 205 hectares to link up with the broader corridor. The plan is also been really attractive to the owners of that land, the Sporting Shooters Party of Australia, believe it or not. Work with anyone to get to conservation outcomes nowadays. And they're really excited because they can continue to use that plan to help manage these areas afterwards. So it's written in really good plain English. Anyone can pick that up and understand where to go and what to do. So we planted 114,000 trees on this particular site and have done assisted regeneration on 65 hectares. So it's just up in this little area here. So this is the whole corridor. The site's up in this little patch here. And you can see with the development that is earmarked for this whole area, it's really vital in the protection of that entire corridor. So breaking that down again using mapping, the purple areas there is where high density planting was going and has gone, and the green areas with lower density planting. All the other areas left out of there are assisted regeneration areas. And again, when doing zones, precincts, doing these sorts of stuff, it's not just a mapping exercise done via desktop. This is done out in the field. So every line on that map is easy to identify. It's a track, it's a creek, it's a gully, it's a fig tree that's going to stay around hopefully for a little while, a big fence post, something that's quite distinguishable. So that's the site. And again, we did that detailed mapping so every single person involved in the restoration process could understand what to do and where to do it. So that's just zones 1 and 2A. And in fact, when we got to the planting stage of this project, we actually had the whole planting palette done to each regional ecosystem, the numbers that needed to be done and where they needed to be placed throughout each zone. So this is a picture of the site before, not long after the cows got taken off. It's not too bad, this section, obviously some pretty long grass. That was in 2014. Planting occurred between about March and May 2015. And that was it after 6 months of the plants in the ground. They are actually in there, little baby tube stock. That was it a year later, and that's it at the moment. So it's quite a different style of planting than I've done in the past when recreating rainforest or wetlands or different systems. This is a more open sclerophyll system, so working with the state government, they wanted to put things in rows to again assist management of the land post EcoShore leaving the site. So just a couple of other areas. There's zone 4, you can see it before and after. That's the area now. Just got burnt actually accidentally by a slasher going over a rock. Not by us, unfortunately, fortunately, but someone else. I wanted to put this little slide in there quickly because when you go big scale, the inclination for us is to really start using all sorts of unskilled labour. Now, there's a really good place for that, but there's also a place for skills. And so you can see here the EcoShore team painstakingly working through the rip lines. Weeds grow full strength in rip lines after that sort of disturbance, and working around those native plants. Because if you went through with a quick spray unit, they're gone. And that's it now. So that same area. So some of the quick practical solutions in scaling up is really where to apply the different approaches to restoration to maximise resilience, that capacity for recovery, the dollars, the time, our effort. Understanding the application of assisted regen, because there's a lot of publications that talk about this. We've got it in our language now, but really as a group understanding where to apply it and how to facilitate that. So rather than talking about that. Looking at planning, on-ground works, successional species and recovery and how we work that into our programs. Not over-maintaining sites. I think Darren's in the audience here, Darren Roach. It's a lovely term he's coined, is keep it woolly. We, often regenerators will get in there, shit, there's a weed, quick, whack that out. Just let things get a little bit woollier and time your weed control, time your follow-up, not to let weeds overtake those emerging seedlings, but to manage it and keep a good eye on and time things. Don't overdo it, don't underdo it. And that takes a lot of time and skill. Quality work, because it's on a larger scale, doesn't mean that we just do machinery, but use it where we can and need to. And to really increase the scale, find the places and tasks where planting and less skilled labour might be utilised. I think we've got to really utilise better ways of attracting funding. So whether it's doing a project like this and using that threatened species, using carbon funding, using threatened species money, whatever you can do to expand and facilitate that growth, I think is a really clever way to do things, and working with a much wider range of people wherever we can. I'm conscious of time, so be creative in that space, train and upskill each other, look at longer term funding models, work with government, and most of all start working with academia, because I think if we better work, the academia or academic world and practitioners, that's where the innovation's going to come in. We can only ever do so much separately. And that's some fauna-friendly fencing, as you can see. They're very friendly. Thanks very much, everyone.